Japan will see a snap election to its lower house or the Diet on Sunday. The election was pulled forward by an entire year by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, despite his Liberal Democratic Party's two-third majority in both upper and lower houses of parliament. Issues topmost on people's minds are a sagging economy and high external debt, but Prime Minister Abe's sharp, uncompromising stand on North Korea's missiles over Japan and the hostile country's threat to sink Japan may up his fortunes and make the gamble pay off. Two opposition parties, the Party of Hope set up by the Tokyo governor Yuriko Koike and the new Constitutional Democratic Party, have offered stiff competition to the Prime Minister in the run-up to these elections. Japan's Prime Minister was under fire for alleged cronyism and his brand of economic reforms termed Abenomics. Still, the opposition parties are not expected to win more than 50 seats each. The Prime Minister's ruling LDP, on the other hand, is the favourite to win about 300 seats in the 465-seat lower house of parliament. If Prime Minister Abe wins, he will be the longest-serving Prime Minister in post-war Japan. Professor Jeffrey Kingston is joining us from Tokyo. He is a specialist in Asian affairs at the Temple University in Tokyo. Professor, thanks for speaking with us here at WION. What do you make of the timing of these polls?
Well, he called the snap election at the perfect time, when the North Korean missile tests were stoking anxiety among the Japanese public, and when the opposition parties were totally unprepared to contest elections. And so by calling the elections more than a year ahead of time, he really caught everybody by surprise. And he has made a strong case to the people that, look, you know, I have some problems, I may have some scandals, but flaws and all, who do you trust more during a national security crisis, me or these untested leaders? And I think he's been winning that argument.
All right. So the North Korea crisis, clearly something that's going to be watched out for. Professor Kingston, stay with me a second. Let's take you through some of the other factors affecting this election. At 100,000 tons, the USS Ronald Reagan is the behemoth, a virtual Godzilla on the high seas. With its 90-odd aircraft of every kind on board, this vessel is the flagship of the US Strike Group 5. It has docked in South Korea's Busan harbor for joint drills. North Korea has always opposed America's joint drills with South Korea, seeing them as provocative and intended to intimidate. The North, many analysts see the North saber-rattling and missile testing as linked to the US-South Korean drills.
As for the DPRK, this is the matter of life and death. And the present situation further strengthens our belief that we should strongly hold to the nuclear weapons to deter the possible U.S. attacks. That the DPRK will regard all attempts to stifle DPRK in the excuse of the implementation of so-called UN sanctions resolutions as an act of aggression and war against the DPRK.
This is a point China has also urged on the US, indicating that the US must sit down to negotiate with North Korea. But America sees this as succumbing to the blackmail of an authoritarian regime and has refused to do so. Indications are that President Trump will again put pressure on China to work with the North Koreans. The view coming out of Washington is that President Xi will emerge stronger from the party Congress now in session. Therefore, he will have more leverage to work on Pyongyang. Trump sets off on his Asia visit beginning November 3rd, which will take him to Japan, South Korea, China, Vietnam and the Philippines. While tensions on the Korean peninsula are expected to form the high point of Trump's talks with leaders in Japan, South Korea and China, with Vietnam and the Philippines, it could be more about signaling US support for them in their confrontation with Beijing in the South China Sea. All right. Professor Kingston from Temple University in Tokyo continues to be with us on the broadcast right now. Professor Kingston, we were talking about the US angle, but coming back to Japan, the missile crisis with North Korea, do you feel that Prime Minister Abe inspires trust in the Japanese people at this crucial point in time?
The interesting thing is that people who support revision of the Constitution, say they want it to happen, but not under Abe. People who support the LDP say yes, but we need a new leader. So Abe himself has not won the trust and confidence of the people. So he's sort of a bit of a wounded leader, and he's not getting the mandate that he sought. He said, I am holding this election because I want the people to have a chance to comment on whether they agree with my hardline, no dialogue policy with North Korea. And it turns out that 49% of the people don't agree with that, and only like 42% agree with it. So he doesn't have a mandate for his hardline because people think he's shortchanging diplomacy.
Okay, so obviously he's got some things really taken care of over there, but let's also take a look at this point at who are the others running for tomorrow's snap polls in Japan. All eyes will be on the incumbent Shinzo Abe, and his will be a gamble of calling early elections, and the question is, will that pay off? Taking Abe on will be Kazuo Shi of the opposition Japanese Communist Party. A third contender, of course, is Yukio Edano, whose Constitutional Democratic Party has been gaining momentum ahead of the polls. Let's also take a look at those who are not contesting but still have a lot on the line. First up, of course, is Yuriko Koike. She's the mayor of Tokyo and she founded the Party of Hope. Remember, she decided to launch her party the very same day that Prime Minister Abe decided to call snap polls. She's also decided not to run in the elections despite having the credentials. Natsuo Yamaguchi is the head of the Buddhist-backed Komeito Party, which is the coalition party of Abe's Liberal Democratic Party. Meanwhile, Ichiro Matsui, who heads Nippon Ishin Nokai, an opposition party that works closely with Prime Minister Abe's Liberal Democratic Party. Right, let's also take a look at one of his pet economic policies. It's called Abenomics. It's represented by 3 arrows designed to each hit the bullseye and revive Japan's slacking economic growth. It's been coined Abenomics after the man who introduced the strategy, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And when Japan goes into an election, the Prime Minister has pulled forward by an entire year on Sunday. It's expected to be one of 2 policies that will ensure a comfortable majority for a 4th term for Abe and make him the longest-serving Prime Minister in Japan's history. But what are the problems besetting Japan's economy and how exactly will Abenomics address them? Our senior foreign editor Padma Rao breaks it down.
What is Abenomics all about? Here's arrow 1. This one's about monetary easing. Japanese consumers are saving but not spending their money. After the earthquake of 2012, there was a depression followed by a recession. And unjudicious spending in the past has led to a high debt on part of the government. What are Abe's solutions? Well, the National Bank is to release more money into the market. That, in turn, is expected to boost spending, and it's also expected to bring down the cost of exports. Abenomics' arrow 2 is about robust fiscal reform. Japan's population is aging and there has been increased welfare spending. Tokyo is also paying back huge debt without any new sources of income. And there's infrastructure spending on big-ticket projects like the Olympics in 2020. What are Abe's solutions? Higher consumer tax to meet spending. And finally, here is Abenomics' arrow 3. This is about boosting private investment. Japan has seen almost zero growth for the last 20 years. It also has the globally lowest female labor force. It has a strong yen, but that's what's making exports suffer. And Abe's solutions to those problems are making business easier in Japan, lowering corporation tax, incentivizing female labor forces, and inviting foreigners and fast-tracking residence permits. There is going to be an increased focus on cultural exports and an increase in inbound tourism. And finally, Mr. Shinzo Abe also wants to encourage FDI or foreign direct investment in Japan. Padma Rao, WION.
So Abenomics has been panned. The economic slowdown is apparent. But Professor Jeff Kingston from Temple University, Tokyo, is telling us that Prime Minister Abe is still going to win. Isn't that a contradiction, though? Doesn't seem to inspire the voters, but they'll still end up voting him in.
Yeah, that's the Abe conundrum. I mean, usually, if most people don't think highly of your leadership, don't think that your policies are working, you'd be roadkill. But Abe is blessed with weak rivals. And so, the LDP has got a national vote mobilization network. And he's up against two brand new parties that are totally unprepared. So it's a bit of an unfair contest, David Goliath.
Okay, so you're saying no rivals in the opposition, but what about within the LDP, Professor? Are there any challengers in there to Mr. Abe?
Well, there's nobody who's really a strong contender within the party. So he's blessed with not much of an opposition and no real plausible rivals inside the party. So I think he's pretty much likely to win the presidential election for the LDP next September, unless, of course, these scandals blow up, if somebody finds a smoking gun. He's riding high mostly because of the Tina factor. There is no alternative. And so, there are two people in his party who are somewhat strong, but I don't think they could really challenge him.